Hey y'all, I'm Kim, host of Book Marketing Mania, and I'm so thrilled you're tuning in today as my guest is my sweet friend, Velma Knowles. Velma is a leadership coach, author of The Valuable Leader, and host of Your Leadership Chat podcast. I couldn't wait to talk to Velma and share with you all about her starting her podcast to help market her book, how she connects and collaborates with guests as a podcast guest herself to land speaking engagements and client and reader referrals, and tips that she shares with you if you are thinking of starting an interview podcast yourself. You are in for a treat today, so let's get to it. Hey, Velma, welcome to Book Marketing Mania. I'm so thrilled you're here today to serve my listeners.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. I'm excited to be here with you and everyone else that's listening in.
Yeah, me too. So y'all heard me in the introduction talk about Velma being the author of the Valuable Leader book, which I love so much and think everybody should read it to learn how to grow their own leadership skills, no matter who you're leading. But also Velma hosts the Your Leadership Chat podcast. And so Velma, tell us a little bit about starting your podcast and how that's helped you market your book.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kim. And thanks everyone for tuning in. First, I should say that I am not the expert on podcast or video podcasts. That's Kim.
No.
I wrote the book, The Valuable Leader, and contributed, and then wrote another book and contributed, co-authored two other books. And it's been a while of just putting that out there. And the Lord laid it on my heart that I should use video and audio as a means to share with other people about the books that I've written and the content and workshops and things that I provide for my clients. And in 2022, I kept feeling called to use video and audio. And I need to tell you all, okay, yes, I am a professional speaker, but I did not want to use video. I don't like to hear my voice on audio. And then I had to get over myself and say, this is not about me. So what happened was I kept feeling called to do it. And that calling came with resistance because I felt very much afraid to do it. And so fear struck in and I was like, no. And I procrastinated. Like, I think maybe some of you have been in my shoes and have wanted to do something and you just like let fear stop you. But I just decided that it was time for me to obey. And I was chatting with another friend of mine, business colleague and speaker, and I was telling him that I wanted to do a podcast and I wanted to use it as a way to help my listeners and my audience learn from some of the things that I have learned from and from other valuable leaders as well. And he said, well, let's just turn on the audio and video right now. Let's turn on Zoom. And so, of course, we did. And I recorded it, but then I put it on the side and said, yay, I did it. Check the list. And I didn't publish it for a couple of weeks. And then someone else I was talking to asked. And so few people started raising their hand saying, I'd love to be on your podcast. And I was thinking, I don't really have a podcast. But anyway, I just went ahead and I recorded a few sessions. And during the process, 4 signature questions just surfaced. And what I mean by a signature question is it's a question that I ask every guest. So I go through these same questions every time. And I realize that it's a great way to collect research as well, because you hear different perspectives. And we launched live Your Leadership Chat, which is a video podcast on YouTube. And it is where we just talk with valuable leaders and you get to listen in on some of the lessons that they've learned and valuable tips and strategies about how they grew as a leader, how others have influenced them, and how they are now paying it forward to influence others to become valuable leaders in their lives. And so that's kind of how it happened. And I used the book, The Valuable Leader, as the springboard to talk about leadership and use video and audio to help get that message out on Your Leadership Chat.
Yeah, that's so great. And you do such a good job of it, Velma. And I'm so glad you talked about, because I think you talk about this a lot in your book, is you're in a position of leadership when you are in a position of, influence. And I think that sometimes as writers and authors, we don't always think about that. Like, we feel like we do have readers and listeners of our podcast or viewers of our YouTube channel. And we are influencing them, right, by sharing our messages. But I mean, and I struggle with this too. It's like, but then you kind of step back and realize, oh yeah, you're a leader by doing that. God has called us to lead in this way, and we are leading people. So I want to just really, have people think about that and follow Velma because, I think we just all really need to embrace that we are leaders and we want to be developing those skills as well as, writers and speakers and things like that. But at the soul of it is that we are leading people. And so you definitely want to have skills to do that. And so I love that there's so many great points in your book. And then as well as like what you're saying, you're bringing the points of your book into your podcast. And I love what you were just talking about. You can use that also as a research tool. Like I think that's so awesome when people may be thinking about, maybe they have a book idea and, by getting on a podcast and talking to other people, you can kind of sort out some of those things you want to talk about in your book and get valuable opinions. And like Velma said, you may just have some core questions that you ask every single person that you interview, and that makes it so much easier, I'm sure too, for the coordination. Yeah. But it's just so cool to see how you're working all of that. And I know relationships are a huge value thing for you, Velma.
Yeah.
And so talk about that, because I think people often think of, when they have a podcast and they have a book, they're thinking of marketing the book specifically, and they're looking at that as they're looking for results in that versus just all the incredible relationships that get built between you and a host, if you're a guest, or you and your guest, if you're a host, like you're doing both. We just talk about that a little bit of just like all the collaborations that come into that, that have come through your podcast.
Yeah, well, actually, you and I collaborated on several things because you've been a guest on your leadership chat too, which I appreciate. And I think your topic, if you haven't had a chance, you've got to hear Kim. Your topic was all about community and collaborating. So you were talking about the importance of that. For me, it's been just an awesome journey. And I think anyone that if you have a book and you want to leverage podcast and video as a medium to do it, there's so many wins to it. First and foremost, you become really good at listening to others and you become skilled because you're the podcast host. So if you're hosting, you become very skilled in listening and leaning in, and just what you're doing, Kim, you're like summarizing, I like that nugget or what you just said. And that helps the person that you're interviewing feel like you're really being heard. And I think people more than anything in the world, they want you to hear them. And when I say hear, really hear their heart. And then the second thing is besides the honor of having people want to be on your guest, they also will be willing to refer others to be on your guest. And that's huge because it helps you build a pipeline. I mean, we're recording this, almost with 2023 ending the year. And I've had more referrals to be on the show that started really small that now I'm batched up, and people that I have recorded are like, oh, can you tell me when it's going to air, because you'll get such a demand from the referrals because they will want to build a relationship with you, and your guests will want to refer people. But then the flip side of it is, that's your audience and you're building that. One of the cool things is ever since I've done the podcast and been recording, I've had invitations to be on other people's podcasts. And I think right now I'm at 15, almost 16. In fact, just as we're recording this, I had another invitation from someone, just blind invitation saying, saw you out on social media, would love to talk to you about being a guest on my podcast. So you get an opportunity to pour into someone else's audience, like Kim is giving me this opportunity to really help them, find their value, share their value with others, and just grow to their full God-given potential. So there's so many win-wins to that. And my network has expanded tremendously because you meet so many cool people in the process.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about, because you are, you devote so much time to your relationships, Velma, and I so admire that. And I love that you are a big proponent of other people doing that, especially leaders. You talk and you teach and coach on people to do that, with the teams that they're interacting with, or whether they're leading them, directly as a manager or just, people they're influencing in their lives. So I admire that so much. And I know that through the relationships you built, there are so many opportunities that come out of it. Like you said, so many fruitful things. And I've seen, we've talked through, and I've seen you get speaking engagements, people that got referred to you, or they saw you speak and then they refer you to someone else. And it's just this constant ongoing relationship things. So I would love, we just talk a little bit about that, like just what benefits you have seen for marketing your book, or just, building relationships through these. Like what are some just things that you have seen as wins?
Yeah, sure. So using the podcast, I think a couple of things that come to mind as far as wins and helping to market the book. And so your leadership chat focuses on the valuable leader, and it focuses on, first and foremost, how are you a valuable leader? What are the ways that you're paying it forward? And that helps people to realize, what does it take to really lead? And my book talks about the 7 keys that help you, increase your growth, value, and influence. And so on the podcast, I kind of hint on some of those, or someone will share that. And it helps to reinforce the book and why you would get the book. Folks that have listened in have always said they love the fact that it's such a diverse group of industries. And so I've been able to get speaking opportunities because I speak, my guests are from the association world, or they're from, the finance industry, or manufacturing industry, or medical industry. It's been all across the board. And they bring such different perspectives. So that has helped me to get speaking opportunities. And with the speaking opportunities, in fact, Kim, just recently, I spoke to a manufacturing industrial supply association, and they bought 75 copies of the book.
Wow.
For the conference attendees on just one session that I was doing. So I was doing one session. I was not their keynote speaker. I was a workshop speaker, and they bought 75 copies of the book for their attendees for that workshop. And that all came about because people are hearing the recordings, the videos, they're seeing it that gets shared on social media, and the relationships you build, they're like, oh, she's host of your leadership chat. And it makes people realize that you're fully invested, not just in writing the book, but in other people growing from the book as you have. So I think to me, that was the big win. It's, I get the speaking engagements out of it, but the best feeling in the world is when someone heard your show, they got your book, and then they write on social media 1 or 2 things from the book. It's just, I couldn't believe it when I first saw that happen. That kind of benefit is something that's just, I don't know, it's a level of significance versus a level of success.
Yeah.
It's just over it's kind of something you don't even know is going to happen. So I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah. And it's priceless. It's not something you can really measure, but it makes such a huge difference. And I'll have to probably have Velma back sometime to talk about how you're really good at with your speaking engagements, offering up the book and kind of including that as part of the package. And I really think people can learn a lot about that and especially the way you talk about, leadership is such a general topic, but it could go so many different ways. You could talk to so many different associations. And I like for our listeners to hear about that, because a lot of them, most of our listeners are, they're writing Christian nonfiction books, but yet their topics are totally applicable to the secular population as well. And they could be speaking to those too. And so, you just have to really think of how you can really just take this message God laid on your heart and just really maximize it. And I think you're really good at that, Velma. So we'll definitely have to maybe have a follow-up and talk about that. So I would love for you to share any tips you have for authors that are thinking of starting an interview podcast like what you're doing, either, an audio one or on YouTube, like what you're doing.
Sure. I think, first and foremost, leave perfection behind, because I've been guilty of that. We kind of want it to be perfect. It's going to be out there in the world. And we're like, oh, if it's got to be right. But I had a good friend tell me, and I put this on a video that I recently did, that practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And so my advice would be to start. I always tell people, don't forget everything and run, which is what held me back. Forget everything and just run. Don't do it. It's face everything and rise. And so if I could encourage anyone today, I would say it doesn't take a lot of equipment. I've been there and I've used those excuses. Oh, I got to have this kind of mic. I've got to have this. No, you don't. You just have to have a willing heart and be obedient and know that if you have the call on your heart to leverage podcast or video in any way to help get your message out to the world, that you're really doing a disservice, one, to yourself if you don't just do it. And two, you're, really depriving someone else of the gifts and the talents and the message that God's laid on your heart because he wants you to share them. Our gifts are not meant for us. They're meant for us to share. And so I had to get over my voice on audio. So you guys are going to have to, but my tip would be to not try to be perfect. To just do it with whatever equipment you have. You can always get more and better equipment and you will get better and better at it. I listened to some of the first recordings I did and I was like, oh my gosh, I was so awful.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Yeah.
But now, I mean, not that it's the greatest thing in the world, but now I feel like, wow, it's smooth, it's flowing. My guests tell me how comfortable they are. So just know that every time you do it, you're just going to get better and better. And give yourself some grace, put it out there and let God, you plant the seeds and then he'll give you the harvest.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a wonderful word for us, Velma. Thank you so much. Well, great. Well, tell everybody where they can connect with you online because I know they'll want to get in touch with you.
Oh, okay. Well, it's really easy. I have a website. It's Velma Knowles. And so that's the spelling of my name. I know it sounds crazy. Velma, like the little girl in Scooby-Doo, if you remember her.
Yes.
It's Velma. And my last name is Knowles. And the K is actually silent. So it's Knowles. And it's velmaknowles.com. And if you go there, I have a few resources. Just hit the resource tab in the navigation bar. If there's something there that can help you, I would be honored for you to be able to leverage that. And you can reach out to me, of course, right there through the contact form. And I do answer all my emails. So I'd love to connect with anyone that I can help.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I'll be sure to put a link to Velma's Valuable Leader book and her podcast, as well as her free resources in the show notes so everybody can grab those. Well, thank you, Velma. I so appreciate your time today.
Oh, my pleasure, Kim. Thank you. And thank you for everyone that's listening. Go get it. I can't wait to see all what you guys are going to do on your podcast and marketing your book.
Oh, y'all, I love what Velma shared about leveraging a podcast to market your book and how there are so many other wins, like being asked to be on other podcasts, being asked to speaking events, plus you get to hone your skills as a great listener and speaker. And if you need some help deciding if hosting your own podcast or guesting on other podcasts is your next best step to building your own audience or marketing your book, I'd love to strategize with you. Grab a session on my calendar at kimstewartmarketing.com/strategy. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, I'll be there for you to help you build your audience and market your book one podcast at a time. See you then.